Hi, it's the Soundboard Demon. I just want to let you know that we got some awesome new merch up at offpod.ca/merch. You can also find the link in the show notes, whatever the hell those are. A huge thank you to Sergeant Squishy for the artwork, and thanks to all of you for listening. Love and kisses, praise Valhalla, and go to hell. On to the show.
Warning, this podcast contains violence, sexuality, gore, and other horrible and disturbing things. Listener discretion is advised. Also, the hosts of this venture are ignorant dipshits, so please do not take anything they say as fact. And enjoy the show.
Now, are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then we'll begin.
Today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be.
It is our basic human right to be fucked up.
A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center.
Putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The defendant shall be incarcerated for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold.
Occultae Veritatis.
What's casting my pods? I am Robert Evans, and you are listening to Behind the Bastards, the podcast where we tell you everything you don't know about the very worst people in history. Nah, it's Richard Bigley. I fooled you, didn't I? I totally fooled you. You all thought I was Robert Evans. Ha 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 ha. Now you're listening to Occultae Veritatis, and in studio, and by studio I mean recording remotely, I have
Mary,
Joe Rogan. Oh, I mean, Ood Gallifrey.
I mean, I'm still the Soundboard Demon, but I'm pretty sure you go to hell for impersonating people.
Especially Joe Rogan. You go to double hell.
Especially Joe Rogan. At least Behind the Bastards is a good podcast.
That's right. It's a great podcast. Didn't Mind of a Skeptical Leftist have them on recently?
I think so. Mind of a Skeptical Leftist is a really good podcast, too.
Yeah, check it out.
Cryos, Greek in origin, meaning cold, chilly, and cool. From this word, we get modern words like cryogenics, which is basically a branch of physics that studies cold shit, like Canadians. Anyway, it's not a really well-defined term what exactly cryogenics is or how it's like differentiated from like refrigeration and other cold stuff. But generally, the accepted idea is that it's kind of like super extreme cold shit. So like minus 238 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like 150 degrees Celsius. Because at this point, that's sort of when like a lot of the gases start to become liquids. The National Institute of Standards and Technology considers anything involving temperatures below 180 degrees Celsius to be cryogenic, because at that point helium, hydrogen, neon, nitrogen, and oxygen all boil and return to gases at above that temperature. So below that temperature they turn into liquids, and that is what they consider cryogenic. So like what
if you farted in that cold, it would be like a liquid fart.
Oh, I have liquid farts, and it doesn't have to be that cold.
I just like the things you say sometimes.
So like, what do you do with shit that's like that cold? Well, you can experiment with superconductivity of electricity. You can build things that have like applications in space, because space is also fucking cold. You can freeze certain tissues very cheaply for like non-invasive surgery. So like, have you ever gotten a wart frozen off? That sort of thing. And of course, what's your poison? Now, I say, what's your poison? Because the original idea was that we were going to be together in studio with liquid nitrogen, and we were going to like flash freeze some like cream and sugar and vanilla and shit and make like ice cream using liquid nitrogen. But we are remote recording, and I don't have that. So we will have to pass on that and do some other sort of poison.
The last time you made ice cream, it was so good.
I want to do an episode on Snowball Earth, so I'd love ice cream for that in the future.
I'm drinking box wine.
Yay, box wine. I just finished a can of Diet Coke.
I'm only 14 years old and I don't want to die, but I know that I am going to die.
The words of a girl asking a judge to grant her dying wish. to have her body cryogenically frozen.
I think being cryopreserved gives me the chance to be cured and woken up, even in hundreds of years' time. I don't want to be buried underground. I want to live and live longer, and I think that in the future they may find a cure for my cancer and wake me up. I want to have this chance. This is my wish.
She won her historic legal battle, and her lawyer says it gave her great solace in her final days.
This case was not about the rights and wrongs of cryopreservation. It was not about that. It was about respecting the wishes of a bright and intelligent and articulate 14-year-old. She knew she was going to die, and knowing that her wish to be cryopreserved was going to be followed gave her great comfort.
Our membership is growing. It's growing steadily. We have 95 people who are currently in storage.
The girl wanted her body to be preserved here at the Cryonics Institute in America. Their mission to one day resuscitate the dead, but no one knows whether that will ever be possible. We can't reveal the girl's identity, but she was terminally ill with cancer. Having carried out research online, she decided she wanted her body to be cryogenically frozen, but her parents were divorced and her father didn't agree. So she went to the High Court, and a judge ruled the girl's mother could decide what happened to the body. She died just over a week later. Her body is now being preserved in one of these cryostat chambers in Michigan, stored at -190 degrees until such a day that scientists find out how to bring her back to life and cure her cancer, all at a cost of £37,000.
Did you feel any conflict in giving this young girl false hope? It wasn't necessarily for the court to dissuade her of her beliefs.
But is a 14-year-old girl facing death in a position to make that judgment?
That's a very difficult question. She carried out this research over a period of months, knowing that she did not have long to live, and pursued it with determination. The flip side of what you're asking is, would it have been right for her to have been denied this treatment? I would find that very difficult.
Hold on here. I've got a couple of YouTube clips I plan to use, and I'm not quite sure how to incorporate that into our system here, so I'll just sort of try it.
Look at this mess. Where is that elderly old man? Old man! Old man! Ah!
Hey, look! A freezer man!
Wait a minute. There is a note.
I have frozen myself so I may live to see the wonders of the future. Thaw me out when robot wives are cheap and effective. P.S. Please alter my pants as fashion dictates.
By God, it worked. I've awakened in the future. Moon pie. What a time to be alive.
Hey, who unplugged my freezer? Return to your state of living death at once, sir.
Is that you, Apu? Whoa. Time has ravaged your once youthful looks.
This is cryogenics, but referring to the freezing of people to be revived later is more specifically called cryonics. So cryonics is a pseudoscience that involves freezing a human body. Dr. James Bedford was actually the first person to undergo this in January of 1967. He had cancer and had, I guess, his body frozen later for, I guess, reanimation. In some cases, just the head is preserved. There's an organization called the Alcor Life Extension Foundation, and they call it, when you preserve just a person's head, they call it neuropreservation. A 1995 article from the former Alcor president, Steve Bridge, states, many of the visitors come to Alcor with little knowledge of cryonics, or even of life extension, aging reversal, nanotechnology, or any of the other wonders we envision. By the time we get to the big climax of the tour, their minds are spinning, Then they ask, wait a minute, I thought there were 29 patients, but you said there were only 11 in these big cylinders. Where are the others? I then point out at the two huge concrete vaults on the opposite wall. Well, you see, 18 of our patients chose to only have their heads frozen. We call this neurosuspension. The article would then go on to say, a few people laugh in surprise or nervousness. A small number look queasy or disgusted. And occasionally, if I have done my job well and set the visitor with descriptions of the repairs that will be possible in the future, the visitor will say, oh, that makes sense. You can just grow a new body for the brain.
Jesus
Sounds like something out of like a bad science fiction novel.
It was 1995.
One of those pulpy ones. Jesus.
If you can revive somebody from like, minus 200 temperature storage, like maybe finding a cure for decapitation isn't too far off, but I doubt they're going to be able to swing the first one anytime soon.
All right, Max, let's imagine that I have terminal cancer and my days are counted. I come to you and we have already done all the paperwork and signed the contract. What happens next?
Well, if we have advance warning, as we have in the majority of recent cases, we'll send a standby team out, which as the name implies means they come and they stand by and wait until clinical death has been declared, which is of course not the same as biological death. It's essentially today's doctor saying, there's nothing much more I can do for this patient. Maybe I could actually revive them for a while, but they're just going to die again. So at that point, the standby team goes into action. Suppose we're in a hospital or a hospice. As soon as clinical death has been declared, within seconds, we'll lift the patient, put them in an ice bath like this. So that's what we begin to do, and then transport the patient from here. We transport the patient here, and we're cooling as quickly as we can, at least until we get to just above the freezing point of water. We do not want to get any colder until we've done the surgical procedure. So that's when we need to begin surgery. So then we'll take them over to the operating table. And one of the first things we do is actually make a couple of burr holes in the skull, to, just like you do in brain surgery, essentially, to observe the brain, whether it's swelling or contracting. That tells us something about the circulation that we're getting. Then depending whether it's a whole body patient or someone just preserving the brain only, if it's a whole body patient, we'll access the major blood vessels of the heart and connect those up to the heat exchanger and the perfusion machinery here. And the idea there is to wash out the blood and body fluids as quickly and thoroughly as possible and replace those with a cryoprotectant, which will be in the reservoir here. And that starts off at a fairly low concentration because we don't want to chemically shock the cells, and we gradually ramp that up in concentration over time. So it's circulating and recirculating through the patient, gradually raising that concentration. The idea is to try and eliminate ice crystal formation. Ice crystals are the enemy of good biological sustainability. So actually what we will do in the end is vitrify the patient. The solution will get colder and colder, more and more viscous, and become really like a glass-like solid, holding everything in place.
I see. And what about those people who choose neuropreservation only rather than full body preservation? What's the difference?
It's a pretty strange option, you might think. Why preserve just the brain? But I'm one of those strange people. That's my option. Even though I have sufficient funding to go whole body, I figure by the time I get to the age where I'm likely to need to be cryopreserved, this whole body is going to be in pretty bad shape. So why not protect the important stuff, which is all up here? So what we'll do in that case, it'll be initially the same procedure. The patient will be put on this operating table. We'll probably be doing the burr holes to observe the surface of the brain. And then we will separate the head from the rest of the body. Now we're interested in the brain, but trying to remove the brain from the skull is just too difficult. Plus it provides additional mechanical protection. So there's no point trying to remove it, but it really is the brain we're interested in. We will then move the patient's cephalon, as we call it, to the cephalon box here, and the head actually goes upside down and is secured with these clamps. And then, as with the whole body patient, except this time we'll access the carotids, and we'll use the perfusion machinery here, and again the heat exchanger. The same thing, removing the fluids from the brain, the blood and body fluids as much as possible, gradually increasing the level of cryoprotectant, which will be monitoring with a computerized system here, basically telling us what temperature, what pressure, degree of concentration of the cryoprotectant. The cryoprotectant is really kind of a medical grade antifreeze, to put it sort of in simple terms. It protects the body against ice crystal formation, but it is itself somewhat toxic. There's no doubt our procedures do some additional chemical damage, so we try to minimize that by improving the formulation and by introducing it at the optimal speed, which we've learned through experience and experiment. Well, what we need to do now is move the patient, whether it's a neuropatient or a whole body patient, into the patient care bay, where we continue the cool down as rapidly as possible till we get down to minus 110 degrees C. At that point, we're going to slow down the process. So once all the operating procedures have been done and we've finished the intermediate cool down, the patient will be in a sleeping bag to protect the skin. And then, if you'd like to demonstrate, we're stepping into the pod. These are aluminum pods. We would then strap the patient in, bolt this closed. That provides additional protection so the patient isn't damaged. And then this pod will be lifted up through the skylight and then down into these dewars. And as you can see, 4 of these will fit inside one of these dewars with additional space for neuropatients in the center.
What about the people who are just neuropreservation? How do you store them?
Okay, we can get about 10 neuropatients in the same volume, but we have slightly different pod systems, you can see. So the same size as a whole body pod, but here there's room for 10 neuropatients. And this is placed over the head, again for mechanical protection, just in case there's any external shock. Most people's heads will fit in there. We've had one that was a pretty tight fit, the patient, the skull will actually have temperature probes attached as we're doing the long-term cool down. So
where are
they'll be in the skull will be protected by some material. This will be placed over the top, and then put in one of these, which goes inside the big dewar.
So how many people do you have altogether?
We currently have 117 patients, averaging about 8 per year, but varies between about 3 and 11, depending on how busy the year is.
I mean, like, it does sort of make sense, though, because, like, why would you spend all the time and energy and whatever to freeze a whole body when really what makes you a person is all contained entirely within your skull, you know? So, like, if you're involved in like a catastrophic accident and were paralyzed, you know, in theory, they would be able to like revive you when they could repair the neurological damage or give you a bionic body, you know, because it's the brain that matters. You know, identical twins have the same DNA, but their minds are different through experience and everything else.
But Richard, I have a tiny freckle on my arm that's shaped like a heart. Can I keep that? Can I keep that? There's a little cutting of that right beside my head in the tube.
You can freeze whatever you want, Mr. Gallifrey.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Oh, that's nice. I
am a generous freezer.
I want to freeze his dick.
Epstein wanted that, actually. He wanted his dick frozen, I think.
Now I hate it.
Yeah. Well, we'll save that for an Epstein episode, though.
Oh, that's on the list. Fuck yes, that's on the list.
So, so like I said, these twins, their memories and experiences are different. And, you know, with the cost of freezing a head is actually way less than freezing the entire body. So, like, according to this 1995 article, it would have cost $120,000 to freeze an entire body, but only $50,000 to freeze just one's head.
That's ridiculous.
And it's not cheap to keep things frozen at that kind of temperature. Like, at those temperatures, the force of entropy is going to try and spread energy everywhere it can, including into that frozen stuff. And you have to constantly having machines running in order to take that heat energy out of the product to keep that low temperature. It's a continual, non-stop effort. And if they're going to do it for hundreds of years, that power bill is going to be expensive.
Well, exactly. And, you know, it's kind of interesting because, like, you know, as I was saying, you know, it is a pseudoscience. There's really nothing tangible to back any of this up.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a pseudoscience based on, we'll figure it out later kind of thing, eh?
Well, exactly. You know, you can't freeze a human body without causing like catastrophic cell damage. You know, like it was interesting because in a 2002 Chicago Tribune article I had read, one, I guess, expert in cryogenic tissue preservation, Jens Carlson, says they are effectively destroying the body and preserving the pieces, hoping someone in the future can put the pieces back together. So I guess, like, let's just say I got you a whole bunch of Big Macs and a bunch of Junior Whoppers and then said, you know, Ood, let's make a cow out of this.
Jeez, you put it like that.
That's what you're doing, because you're like, your body is your cells are destroyed, your tissues are damaged, you know, and then they're like, well, let's just put it back together.
Yeah, when water freezes, it forms these like crystalline, sharp-edged structures called ice, And you know what doesn't like ice? All of your cell walls after they burst from being fucking frozen.
Exactly. But yeah, one source in the article even went so far as to say that the largest society in the field, the Society of Cryobiology, explicitly states in its bylaws that those practicing cryonics are not allowed in the society and will be removed if discovered. So like actual professional scientists that do like actual like cold ass biology stuff is like, if this is what you're doing, like you're fucking out of here.
Get the fuck out of here with that bullshit.
Listen, bud, I spent the last 6 months hanging out with frozen wood frogs. I don't want none of your bullshit.
Well, exactly. You know, this is like I said, they eject you for practicing cryonics. So it's kind of like that time I got disbarred for practicing bird law, you know?
Ready, boys and girls, because here's where it gets good. Ryan McPoyle didn't attack Liam, Royal did. And Lion was lying about Ryan attacking Liam to protect Royal from the chair, or lethal injection, or perhaps some sort of small bird guillotine. I wouldn't understand the physics of it. I'm not an executioner. I'm just the best goddamn bird lawyer in the world.
I assume everybody laughed at the bird law comment. Anybody who watches Always Sunny and better have laughed. You know, it's a good joke.
I laughed. It's just whenever half the time when I laugh, I forget to push the push to talk button, and then I feel like arrogant and pompous for wanting to capture my laugh. You know.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Remote recording's so weird, isn't it?
It is.
It is. Yes.
Yeah, I'm excited for when like we can like look at each other's faces right in the snout when we talk to each other, you know,
and start blasting each other with particles.
I'm excited for all snuggling on the couches.
Yeah, yes, power snuggling. When COVID's over, I'm starved to touch.
the Occultae Veritatis power snuggle session.
Yes. Oh, that'll be good.
Beautiful. Yes.
It's a wonderfully disgusting display of human emotion.
Mm-hmm.
Which is also what I look like most days. So anyway, there's another guy, Harold Schechter. He wrote a book called The Whole Death Catalog, and he raises like some other questions about cryonics as well. So like imagine you were frozen and being treated for your illness, and then you awaken in the future. And everyone you know is now dead. And just give me 1 second here. I got another YouTube clip I got to send you.
Yes.
Okay.
Here's to another lousy millennium.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What the? It's the future. My parents, my coworkers, my girlfriend. I'll never see any of them again. Yahoo!
I felt that clip was appropriate.
Oh yeah. No, I feel in a lot of ways that like Futurama is like on the same level as Simpsons. I think it has the same. I think it's just as classic. Yeah, I also that's exactly how it began, with Fry being fucking in a frozen tube. You know?
Exactly. Just this like beautiful, you know, social thing, you know, that it's, you know, kind of very universally enjoyed. So
Wizard and the Bruiser podcast did a really good multi-part episode on Futurama.
Cool.
Oh, that's
just saying.
That's in the last podcast network, right?
Yeah.
Not to mention the social and technologic advances, you know, shaking your understanding of what it means to live. And now I've got another. Do you see it? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see Picard.
I'm Captain Picard.
Excellent. Now maybe we'll be able to get some things straightened out.
We may indeed. Those comm panels are for official ship business.
Well, if they're so important, why don't they need an executive key?
Aboard a starship vessel, that is not necessary. We are all capable of exercising self-discipline. Now, you will refrain from using them.
Now, just a minute.
We are in a very serious and potentially dangerous situation.
I'm sure whatever it is seems very important to you. But my situation is far more critical.
I don't think you are aware of your situation, or of how much time has passed.
Believe me, I am fully cognizant of where I am and when. It is simply that I have more to protect than a man in your position could possibly imagine. No offense meant, but a military career has never been considered to be upwardly mobile. I must contact my lawyer.
Your lawyer has been dead for centuries.
Yes, of course I know that. But he was a full partner in a very important firm. Rest assured, that firm is still operating.
That's what all this is about. A lot has changed in the past 300 years. People are no longer obsessed with the accumulation of things. We have eliminated hunger, want, the need for possessions. We've grown out of our infancy.
You've got it all wrong. It has never been about possessions. It's about power.
Power to do what?
To control your life, your destiny.
That kind of control is an illusion.
Really? I'm here, aren't I? I should be dead, but I'm not. Captain, I didn't mean to come on so strong. It's just that I've built my whole life on knowing what's going on. And for the first time, I feel completely out of touch. It's making me crazy. You can understand that.
That's the first thing you said I do understand. I'll see what I can do. And please, stay off the comm panels.
There's no trace of my money. My office is gone. What will I do? How will I live?
This is the 24th century. Material needs no longer exist.
Then what's the challenge?
The challenge, Mr. Offenhouse, is to improve yourself, to enrich yourself. Enjoy it.
Oh, fuck you guys, Captain Picard's so hot.
Yeah, that's my optimistic, I guess, view of the future here.
Sounds really nice.
Okay, so you're frozen. You wake up, say in this case, like in the 24th century, everything's different. So like, how would you cope? What kind of would that take on somebody, like psychologically?
I bet it would take quite a psychological toll. In such a different, especially in that instance where this guy's like obviously like a super capitalistic like D-bag, and Captain Picard's like, fuck off D-bag, things are cool now.
Yeah, it's nice when, he wakes up in like, a socialist paradise future where all his basic needs are supported and all he has to do is like climb the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and support and like enrich himself. But like, what if he wakes up in like dystopian wasteland? Like, I've been getting into Warhammer 40,000 lore recently, and that's like a dark future you don't want to be in. Like, that's something else these people are betting on, that it's going to be better in the future, And I'm not sure that's a safe bet.
Some guy gets frozen in like 1930s and he wakes up in like fucking 2020, like,
No, put me back, put me back, put me back.
Put me back, it's not too late.
What do you mean black people can use my fountain?
Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Why did I get frozen? I was avoiding the Spanish flu. So what's happening in 2020?
Yeah, precisely. And I mean, to be in that like isolated where people, there's nobody that you got to start over again. Like for example, I lived in Germany and all my family and everyone were still alive, just on the other side of the ocean. 12 hours difference in time zone, and communication then still drove me crazy. Trying to time, ICQ chats and MSN chats and emails and sending files and pictures and stuff with to family. Their lives and their successes and their failures and their strengths and weaknesses still continued without me, but imagine waking up and just having nobody, or imagine looking back at your family's lives and seeing what happened to them after the fact. You can kind of, you saw them and then you get to see what became of them.
This morning, Simon Phoenix escaped from this cryo facility. We've had 11 murder-death kills so far. You see, we have become a society of peace, loving, and understanding, and we are, quite frankly, not equipped to deal with this situation.
There have been no deaths of unnatural causes in San Angeles in the last 16 years.
The Santa Barbara, Los Angeles, San Diego Metroplex were merged in 2011. You are in the center of what used to be Los Angeles.
That's great. You, give me a Marlboro.
Yes, of course, right away. What's a Marlboro?
Just a cigarette, any cigarette.
Smoking is not good for you, and has been deemed that anything not good for you is bad, hence illegal. Alcohol, caffeine, contact sports, meat.
Are you shitting me?
John Spartan, you are fined 1 credit for a violation of the verbal morality statute.
What the hell is that?
John Spartan, you are fined 1 credit.
Bad language, chocolate, gasoline, uneducational toys, and anything spicy.
The results that the people that pursue cryonics seem to be pursuing are very, optimistic. Do you want to outlive all your family and friends of everything you ever known? What is it going to be like being removed from the culture and being, placed in a totally alien one you can't really reference to?
Strange man in a strange world.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's also some ethical considerations raised. Could cryonics lead to the overpopulation of the earth? If all these people who were born and are supposed to eventually die, if you could push pause on that, and then bring them back later when they want to be brought back. What if that happens and then the world becomes overpopulated? Or perhaps, the more practical, if you have $120,000 laying around to freeze your corpse, why wouldn't you use that $120,000 to feed families, who need help in present day Earth, as opposed to being worried about the future Earth,
And just about yourself and like a hypothetical future.
Cezanne, it's been the ambition of millionaires to have their heads frozen in liquid nitrogen, and at some point in the future, when we can cure many diseases like cancer and things, we'll simply revive them and in that sense attain a certain amount of immortality. Well, the devil is in the details. First of all, if you suddenly freeze the human body, the problem is that ice crystals begin to form inside the cells. As the ice crystals expand, they rupture the cells. So in other words, freezing the human body seems to work only superficially. But if you look at the human tissue under a microscope, you find massive tearing and disruption of cell walls. Now you may say to yourself, now wait a minute, fish do it, right? Don't they simply get frozen solid in wintertime? Frogs, aren't they being able to thaw themselves out when it's springtime from a block of ice? And the answer is yes, but they do it with antifreeze, that is glucose. Here's how it works. You know you put antifreeze inside your car, so even though outside everything can be frozen solid, but inside your car liquids still flow normally, and so your car still runs. In the same way, glucose is an antifreeze for frogs and certain fish, that their bodies could still be in liquid form with blood circulating, even though they are frozen solid on the outside. Now, this doesn't mean that at some point in the future, we might be able to create a natural kind of antifreeze for the human body. However, at the present time, the levels of glucose found in frogs and fish that enable them to undergo sustained animation would kill a human being. So it would take genetic engineering. So I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that those organizations that advertise that you can live forever this way may be misleading the public, because when the body is thawed out, what you have is dead tissue.
And And so, like, in terms of like cryonics, there's also like the how does it work portion. So how it works is basically you have to incur clinical death before they even do anything. So you have to have died. You are dead. You are a corpse. You are officially a corpse before they do anything. It's not like, oh no, I've got cancer of whatever, and now you put me on ice and now I'm frozen and it can be revived. I am dead. No brain activity, no heart activity. You're dead. You're dead. And so you're not only asking them to cure whatever has, succumbed you, you're also asking them to bring you back to life.
I did not know that. That is fucking wild. I thought it was like you could just like flash frozen where you're like, oh shit, I got like this terrible, incurable disease. Like freeze me until and bring me back when it's cured. I didn't know that you had to be dead.
Yeah, they don't freeze you or can't freeze you while you're alive. You have to be dead first. And so it's really just a bunch of corpses on ice, like quite literally corpses.
That seems literally like 85,000 times stupider now that I know that.
I forget if it's Futurama or Simpsons, but another good joke around that is like somebody is cryonically frozen, and they're saying like, oh, we can only revive him when we figure out how to cure 17 stab wounds to the back.
Oh, Mr. Burns will thaw you out the second they discover the cure for 17 stab wounds in the back. How are we doing, boys?
Well, we're up to 15.
Yeah, it was The Simpsons. It was Mr. Burns, because, it was Mr. Burns who had the stab wounds. Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, you're dead. Now, in an ideal world, moments later, your cryonic preservation will begin and they will start working on you. So they will administer cryoprotectants to stop the water in your corpse from freezing. Now, of course, that sort of works out. There is a biological and scientific basis for that particular idea. So like there are Arctic and Antarctic insects and fish and amphibians that create cryoprotectants naturally. So like ash borers can survive in minus 30 degrees Celsius. Bed bugs can survive up to minus 15 degrees Celsius for like 3.5 days. However, in a human, that's not possible. We're too big. Our cells aren't engineered to be frozen, even if we do, cryo protect our cells. So cellular damage will happen. Brain damage will happen. You just can't freeze something this big. And so it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, so not only are you a corpse, now you've got brain damage from your neurons being frozen, and now they've taken your frozen head and now they put you in some sort of body or try to clone you a new body to transplant your now frozen, freezer burned brain into, it's just even more ridiculous as you kind of dive into it. But there is some science being done on that. They have been able to take a rabbit kidney and preserve it at minus 135 degrees Celsius. They were able to rewarm the kidney and successfully transplant it into a rabbit. And the kidney was still functional and still viable and was able to, sustain this rabbit indefinitely as its sole functioning kidney.
Okay, but that's literally one organ out of how many other organs?
Precisely. But if they can do it to your brain and it still be viable and functional, if you just sort of escape the whole fact that you were dead before they even began to extract it.
I don't know if I can. I'm really stuck on that now.
So I mean, there is some science behind it, but the whole concept, of trying to take somebody, bring them back to life, and then cure them of whatever killed them is just it's silly. And so
that all sounds really cool for like preserving organs for people who need them.
Yeah, to preserve an organ. You know, if I had a kidney and someone on the other side of the world needed that specific kidney, you know, they could extract it from me, preserve it, fly it across the world for however long it needs to be done, and then insert it back into them, and then I've saved a life on the other side of the world because I happen to have the only kidney that they could possibly have used. You know,
Right.
and it's, I mean, that's cool medical science, but that's what that is when something can be proven and tested, it is called science. It's science. Cryonics, still pseudoscience. It's just a bunch of bullshit.
Very optimistic.
Yeah. Some people had proposed that nanotechnology could be used to aid those in reviving who've undergone cryogenic or cryonic stasis. So, you know, they're going to have a whole bunch of like little robots inserted into you to kind of fix the stuff that they couldn't prevent being damaged. So that said, according to the Human Tissue Authority in the UK, quote, several facilities existed in the U.S. starting in the 1960s, which often relied on funding from the living relatives of the cryopreserved, and that could not maintain conditions when relatives were no longer willing or able to pay. As a result, all but one of the documented cryonic preservations prior to 1973 ended in failure and thawing out and disposal of the bodies. So long story short, make sure your cryonics provider has a proven track record, I guess, or some sort of contingency to keep you frozen, because if they go under,
Bye.
That's right. Goodbye.
Cryonics is a controversial science involving freezing human remains. Its believers hope that one day those remains can be brought back to life. Now, a former employee of America's largest cryonics center is speaking up, claiming that he witnessed bizarre and unbelievable acts while he was working there. And Larry Johnson is with us this morning. His controversial new book is called Frozen. He's with us live in the studio this morning. So you had an interesting and eclectic career, including being a trained emergency medical technician. Why'd you go to work at Cryonics?
Yeah, like you said, I'd been a paramedic for about 25 years. Very stressful business. I was on the edge of burnout.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been interested in biological research, and I saw this as an opportunity to get into that field. That's how I came about Alcor.
Okay, so you go to work at Alcor, and typically what was their method for freezing these corpses?
Typically what would happen is they would have a member who's a member of Alcor would pass away, would die. They would bring that individual to the facility and begin the cool down process. Depending on what option you would take depends on what they do to you. If you take the whole body option, they freeze your whole body. If you want just the head only option, they just freeze the head.
So it was quite common for them to decapitate these corpses?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. Now, did you go to work there before Ted Williams was brought there or after?
It was afterwards. I went to work there about 6 months after Ted was brought into that facility.
Right. And you allege that you saw his corpse being mishandled? What did you say?
I saw his head. What happens is they had his head in one, looked like a freezer chest. It's called a cryostar, and it was malfunctioning. There were some issues, so they wanted to move his head into another vessel to lower the temperature of his head down to -321 Fahrenheit.
Right.
So they went to put his head in that vessel. What you got to do is, obviously the head's round, it's not going to sit upright. So they got a tuna fish can. They put it in the bottom of that vessel, they set the head on top of the can, and then fill the vessel with liquid nitrogen. Well, obviously after 2 or 3 days of being in that state, when they pull you out, that can is stuck to the top of the head.
Right.
In Williams's case, that's exactly what happened. They pulled him out.
Right.
The tuna can was stuck to the top of his head.
Right.
A technician grabbed a wrench, a monkey wrench, took a swing at the can, missed it, missed the can, all right, hit the head, draw back again, a second swing, hit the can, sent it flying across the room.
Gruesome. Gruesome.
I've been a paramedic 25 years, and I've seen some pretty horrible things.
When you saw that stuff, did you go to the head of Alcor? Did you go to the police department, for instance, and say, there's crazy stuff going on?
I did go to the police. I did go to the police.
So how does one fund this? One thing that people have done to fund it is they would take out a life insurance policy for the cost of cryopreservation. So if it cost you $200,000, you take out a life insurance policy for $200,000. And then you die, and then the life insurance policy pays out the $200,000, which your family will then use to freeze your body. So that's partly if you were really into wanting to go through this process, that's what you would do, is you would actually take out a policy, and then they would use the payout in order to fund your cryopreservation. You don't have to necessarily be independently wealthy; just pay a whole lot of life insurance premium.
Yeah, you just got to pay the monthly fee for however long, and then you'll be good.
Precisely.
Wild.
So that's I guess that's my episode on cryonics, and recording remotely, I am Richard Bigley.
It's Murray.
Ood Gallifrey.
And I'm the soundboard demon, or in this case, I guess, in the ether demon now?
Yeah, we gave him access to the internet. You might have been seeing him on Twitter and shit.
I have a MySpace account.
Beautiful.
Of course.
That was a really good episode. I fucking liked that one.
Playing us out, this episode, A Song on Ice Itself. From Fred Waring and his Pennsylvanians. I scream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream. Recorded in 1927. Enjoy and see you in the after show.
In the land of ice and snow, up among the Eskimos, there's a college known as Ukiwawa. Wah, wah, wah. You should hear those college boys. Gee, they make an awful noise when they sing their Eskimo tra-la-la. La-la-la. They've got a leader, big cheerleader, oh, what a guy. He's got a frozen face just like an Eskimo pie. When he says, come on, let's go, though it's 45 below, listen what those Eskimo all holler. Come on, let's go. I scream, you scream, we all scream, right scream, rock, rock. Oogie wah wah la la la. Tuesday, Monday, we all scream for Sunday. Woo. Right boy, Alice saw. Boola boola, sarsaparilla. We've got some chocolate. I'll take the noolah. I scream, you scream, we all scream, right scream, rock, rock. I scream soda water, ginger ale hot. I scream. You scream. We all scream. Right. Scream. Rock, 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 rock. Ooh, ee, wah, wah. I scream. You scream. We all scream. Right. Scream. Ha, 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 ha. Ooh, ee, wah, wah, wah. Very. Iceberg. In third. Forward. And in third. Ice. Green. Go ahead.
Well, it's finally happened. I've reached the bottom of the mailbag in our email box. So, we need feedback from you, our lovely fans. If you have any thoughts on any episodes we've covered, past, present, or future, if you want to provide extra information on an episode, or provide a personal anecdote that relates to one of our episodes, feel free to write in, or just write in to bullshit us, or ask us questions, or whatever. Feedback at ovpod.ca. That's it. Short and sweet this week. Tune in next Sunday for a very academic OVPod episode, but an important one. You know, since we all have mothers. Have a wonderful night, and Val bless.